because AI is never going to go, hey, after all this interviewing you and your idea is kind of stupid, right?
Yeah.
The AI is never going to do that. ChatGPT is always going to go, you're fucking brilliant.
Hello and welcome to the Rose and Rockstar from the Rockstar CMO Epping Marketing Podcast and the Marketing Podcast Network. I'm your host, Ian Truscott, Managing Partner of Velocity B, a B2B sales and marketing advisory firm. It's Saturday the 25th of October, and in a moment I'll join my chum Robert Rose, Chief Troublemaker at Seventh Bear, in our virtual bar, the Rose and Rockstar, where over one of his fabulous cocktails I'll pick his brains on a marketing topic that is top of mind for me. As you probably know, Robert is a prolific writer, and a couple of weeks ago we learned a bit about his writing process, and I got some good feedback on that episode. So this week I asked Robert where generative AI fits into that process, pulling on a thread he shared on his own podcast. But first, we need to play the bar tab. I'll be back in a moment.
We'll be right back.
We'll be right back. Hey marketers, Deborah Eckerling here.
And I'm Keith Smith, and we host the MPN Meta Marketing Show, which is not just another marketing podcast, but the marketing podcast about all the other marketing podcasts.
Podcasts are booming, right? We love them, and people actually listen. They don't scroll, they don't swipe, well, except maybe during the ad breaks.
But here's the secret. With the Marketing Podcast Network, your ads don't make people hit skip. We put your brand on shows that people actually want to hear.
That's right. We match your message with podcasts that make marketing nerds like us perk up and take notes, or at least nod knowingly, pretending they understand.
And don't worry, because we'll deliver your ad naturally. People might even think that we love your brand personally, which of course we totally do, unless it's a veggie smoothie, then maybe not.
If you want your brand heard without making listeners roll their eyes,
head to marketingpodcasts.net and catch marketing fans at work, rest and play. Seriously, your audience is already listening. Make sure they hear your brand and not our awkward jokes.
Join the conversation, because good ads shouldn't just be tolerated, they should be enjoyed.
Yes!
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Hello, my friend. Welcome to the bar.
Thank you very much, mate. And how are you doing?
I'm doing well. It's the end of the week. My football team is doing relatively well this week. And so,
Splendid.
This is the time of year where my football team basically sets my mood for the week. So, so this week I'm in a very good mood. We'll see how things transgress over the next 7 days. But all is well in my world, I have to say.
Mm-hmm. Jolly good. And who was it that you beat somebody? Who was it you beat this week?
Well, my football team, which is of course the Dallas Cowboys, they beat.
Yes.
I'm having a mental old man moment here. They beat the Washington Commanders. I keep wanting to call them the Washington Redskins, which of course is which is the politically incorrect way of saying the original name of the team, but it is the Washington Commanders, or as we call them, the Commodes. But it was a thrashing of sorts, and that was the fun part. Yeah.
Ah, good. Well, they were my former hometown team when I was in DC for a bit. So, yeah,
I see.
I think, I won't be able to get used to it either. So that's me. So yeah. Well done you.
Well, we have a lovely fall-inspired, football file or a fall-inspired cocktail for this evening, because it is the season of pumpkin spice, and of course, everything is pumpkin spice these days. I don't know if there's such a is that a thing in the UK as well? Does pumpkin spice just sort of overtake?
Yeah, no, they're doing their very best, and they're doing their very best making Halloween into a season rather than just a one-night affair.
Well, indeed,
as well.
indeed, yeah, indeed. So the what we have tonight is the pumpkin spiced old fashioned. And it's going to sound weird. And the reason I made this cocktail was because I discovered that there was such a thing as salted caramel whiskey. I didn't even know this was a thing, but I was in the liquor store and I found this whiskey that was salted caramel whiskey. And it's exactly what you think it is. It's whiskey flavored like salted caramel, but it makes perfect sense if you're trying to do a bourbon drink or a whiskey drink with that's going to taste like pumpkin spice. And so what you do is you mix it. I like, because it's way too salty, caramelly, sort of sugary on its own. So what I do is I do 1 part salted caramel whiskey and then 1 part of your favorite bourbon. Now, it doesn't need to be an expensive bourbon because you're putting all sorts of other shit in this, but it can be any really decent bourbon here. So it's 1 and 1. So you've got 2 parts of whiskey and bourbon, and then you have 1/3 of a part of pumpkin spice syrup or pumpkin spice flavoring, whatever is your is your go-to there. And then just, of course, because it's an old fashioned, we're going to add a little bit of bitters, and then stir it with a cinnamon stick, and put a big, put all that into a shaker, shake it up, pour it into a glass with 1 big rock, and away you go. We have our pumpkin spice old fashioned, and it is sweet and lovely and very fall-like.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, you could have that on Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas.
Yeah, it's incredibly
seasonal.
It is the time of year for sure.
'Tis the season. Nice. Love that. So while we're supping these pumpkin spice old fashioned, which actually, now you describe the ingredients, sounds nicer than the title, doesn't it? I have a question for you. I was listening to your podcast, which is the primary podcast I talk about on this podcast. This old marketing that you do.
It's very meta in that way. Yeah.
But what I enjoyed was you briefly touched on how, and I've also spent a considerable part of today using ChatGPT as my little writing buddy. And I was really interested in how you work, and you shared how you work on some marketing. So I wondered if we could chat about how does Robert Rose use ChatGPT in his writing process?
I have come to make it quite a process, if you will. And so what I have done is, we talked a little bit about, my book writing process, right?
Yeah.
On a previous show. So this is more, I use, and in that, so for books and really big, long form, deep level content, I tend to only use AI as sort of faster ways to get to research, right?
Yeah.
And so what I usually have it do is write a white paper on a particular topic and cite all its sources. So it's basically just a faster way to get and to categorize all my citations that I want to go look at and validate and all that kind of stuff, which is, it's nice. It's more like almost like a research assistant. So, but the way that I do it for my regular writing, and my regular writing really includes sort of all of my little rants and raves that I have for the podcast. It also includes my newsletter. It also includes my weekly rose-colored glasses article that I do for CMI, which is really the sort of heart of everything. And so just to sort of tee that up, and the reason I mention all of that is because my content strategy, if you will, on a week-to-week basis, is to pick an idea and run with it across all the different areas.
Right.
So, and this is, by the way, something that I recommend to clients. I'm preaching what I teach and practice, which is I build my first thing to build, and I usually build it toward the end of the previous week or during the weekend of the week upcoming, when I'm going to be working on it, is I build what I call a show Bible, right? And it's the only reason I call it that is because it's from my old TV days, but it's ostensibly a very long document that will be the source document for all the other pieces. And it itself might be 3,000 to 5,000 words in any given week.
Wow.
But it then becomes the source of everything from my scripts to my rants and raves to my email newsletter to my article. And the article is sort of the primary output because that's the longest of the pieces. And so the way I've done that is I've created a custom GPT that walks through an 8-step process. And I won't belabor you unless you want to hear all 8 steps. But basically, the high level is I've created this custom GPT to every time to walk me through this, and it's basically an interview assistant. In other words, it starts with some sort of idea, either an idea that I speak into, the ChatGPT as the prompt, or I type it out, or I paste in an article that I've read that I want to basically take the idea from, or a book idea, or whatever it is. It starts with a context of an idea, like, oh, I just read this Harvard Business Review article. Here's the entire article. I'd like to, talk about this. Then what happens is that the ChatGPT is then prompted to interview me about what I think about this particular article. What did you think about it? What did you think the weaknesses are? What do you think the strengths are? Do you agree with it? Do you disagree with it? What, basically it walks through an interview process and it interviews me about what I think.
And it
takes that interview and then basically turns that into an outline and through a couple of other steps that I could detail if you want, but I'll stop there for the second.
So with the interview, have you trained ChatGPT on what questions to ask, or do you just say, no, interview me on this? Oh, okay.
No, what I do is I say, so Joe actually gave me a tip as we were talking about this on the podcast, which is he does his one at a time question. He trains the GPT to say, ask me these questions one at a time so that the questions then change. I haven't done that yet. I just basically say, give me the questions, right? Interview me. And so, but what I do is I say, for the context, look at the article, but also go out and look at other people's opinions on this, right?
Oh, right.
So before it actually asks the question, it takes everything I've given it and then looks for the broader sentiment on it, whatever that issue is as well. And then comes back with a series of questions. And most of the time, not always, but most of the time, they are in the vein of, what do you think the real heart of the matter is of this? Do you agree with this article? Do you agree? What's the hypothesis here? What's your thesis? What's the idea? What kind of, what do you think the future of this? Whatever those, it's basically, what do you think? Right? Basically, it's trying to get my thinking. And that's the part I have trained it on, which I've said, I want you to interview about me what my beliefs are about this idea. So it makes me wrestle with the idea harder. Basically, it prompts me to actually and answer the questions as I would in an interview, and then that gives it even more context to ask more questions. And then when it feels whatever, like it's gotten enough clarifying answers, it then says, okay, great. I'm sort of, this is what I'm hearing you say. And then it writes up a sort of a summary of what, which becomes the abstract of my article, my 3,000 to 5,000 sort of story Bible.
Yeah, no, what I was going through my head there with you describing that process, I mean, you could do that. You could get ChatGPT to take you through the 5 whys of a problem and things like that, right? Is that a lot of coaching structures are kind of very procedural like that, aren't they? And you can see how you can use ChatGPT almost as a writing coach or as a goals coach or whatever. If there's a structure that you can go through with it and helps and prompts you to think and prompts you to I don't know, write, and so it sounds really interesting.
Yeah, well, one of the more interesting outputs from it, to be honest, is when you don't know the answer.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
When it asks you a question that you don't really have a lot of conviction about. And so one of the things that it will often do is ask me a question about a particular article. It did this the other day when I was asking it about there was a Harvard Business Review article that I was really intrigued by. And so I said, I want to talk, this is the idea I want to talk about, the thesis and research that I want to talk about. I don't think I agree with their conclusion. But I agree with the ultimate point that they're making. In other words, I don't agree how they got there, but I agree that they got to the right place. Yeah. And then basically ChatGPT came back and said, well, okay, show me why, right? Why do you think that? And it basically walked me through some questions. And then we got to a question where I was like, I don't really have a strong conviction on that particular issue. And it was really an interesting issue.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, so I had to stop and then sort of go out and do some Google search and do some reading of my own.
Yeah.
And then I came back and I said, do you have any other readings on this particular topic? Here's what I'm seeing. And then it came back and said, well, here's some other authors that are talking about this and yada, yada.
Yeah.
So it was really interesting. The whole exercise makes you like figure out the details and pressure test your thinking on this. And that's where I find truly the most value. Like the writing part of it is the least interesting part that I want ChatGPT to do. Like I don't really want it to write it for me. What I want it to do is give me the, pressure test my ideas and make me think harder about it, which by the way, extends my writing process, right? My writing process for that show Bible used to be, a couple of hours on a weekend, right? And, a few Google searches and boom, away I go. Now it's, it can be 4, 6, 8 hours of work.
Yeah. I was going to say, and also I think you mentioned that it was taking you longer because I was going to use the last time we chatted about your writing process as a tee up for this, and I forgot. But the cool thing about this is when we've talked about what ChatGPT takes away from you if you just outsource the writing, is it takes away that journey of discovery, whereas you've really leaned into it and got it to kind of encourage you to go on that journey. If that makes sense.
Yes, because that's such a great point, because two things that I would mention there, which is one, it sometimes doesn't work. Right. I mean, it's not a guarantee of success, right? There have been times when I've walked through the whole process and I've gotten to the end of it. I'm like, I'm not nearly as interested in that idea as I thought I was, right? And it's made me sort of pressure test it to the point where it's like, that's not terribly insightful, right? I mean, it's like, okay, maybe the article wasn't great. Maybe the idea wasn't great, or maybe my thinking about it isn't that great. So, but instead of being fooled into thinking, that it is, what I've done is I've wrestled with it hard enough to go, that's who gives a shit, right? And so that's one thing, which is frustrating, to be honest. It's very frustrating, but it's better. It's better than me putting out some mediocre piece of crap. And then secondly,
drown our own darlings.
Yeah, and then secondly, because I have to wrestle with it, I do the work, and I value it more. I care about it more. That journey is an important piece of it because it imbues the knowledge into me. And I'm not just shortcutting it to get to a piece, to get to an output. And that is, I've talked about this before. I talk about it in my book, and I talk about this, this idea of the difference between constructed and created content, right? Where created content is loved before it even exists. And constructed content can only be loved after it exists. And so you can use ChatGPT to write a piece for you and outsource your brain and come up with an idea. And maybe it comes up with something that you love, right? But it's only after it's created that can you love it. But this idea that I have based on an article or a book or something I've read or a conversation I've had or whatever, I love that idea before it even exists. Already. And what I'm doing is I'm actually using AI to wrestle with it to say, do I continue to love it before it exists? Or am I just, is it a torrid romance, or is it something I want to get married to?
Well, your point there, I think, about the writing process, I totally agree with as well, is that sometimes you'll start off with a particular premise, but the process actually takes you in a different journey. You're surprised by what comes out at the end of it, even if you're not using ChatGPT and you're just writing something for yourself. You're kind of like, the ideas start flowing, your opinion moves, and that's the journey of writing, right? And I like the fact you're doing that kind of on steroids with ChatGPT helping you with that, and that what comes out of it, you're not sure when you start.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. I'm not sure when it's done. That's another really great point is at some point I have to, there's that wonderful quote. It's a little off, but I really liked it. It was Ben Affleck, I think, on the stage, which is weird, but that Ben Affleck is going to be giving you sage advice. But he talked about AI and why he thought it would never basically replace the creative expert, right? What he called creative talent. And he said, because he said a craftsman knows how to do the thing and an artist knows when to stop.
Oh, no.
And he said that AI will never be an artist because it never knows when to stop. And it's true, although I would argue that craftsman and artist are not the right words for that. So it's, we can get into pedantic, sorts of arguments about that. But the tone of what he was saying is something I really appreciate, which is it requires at some point taste, discernment, and some level of expertise of the human to go, we're done. Like, this is a good idea, or this is not a good idea, because AI is never going to go, hey, after all this interviewing you, and your idea is kind of stupid, right? The AI is never going to do that. ChatGPT is always going to go, you're fucking brilliant. You are the best. This is the sharpest thing I've ever seen. And you have to look, you have to be able to look past all that to really get into like, this really is interesting, or this is insightful. And by the way, fully baked, and I can actually write something out of this.
Yeah, and at the end of every response from every prompt from ChatGPT, it doesn't say, we're done now. It says, can I move on and do something else? Shall we now do another thing? You would never satisfy it in that way. So that's a really good point.
Exactly.
All right, mate.
You can continue to say, is this the best thing that you can do? Is this the best version that you can write? And AI will always go, no, I can do better. I can polish it even more.
So where can people find humanly polished content of yours, Robert?
They will find it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to point you to my newsletter, because
cool.
Much to your great shock, I'm sure our website is undergoing renovation at the moment. So I'm going to point you to my website, which you can get at seventhbearlens.substack.com. You can put the link in the show notes there, but I would love, you can also find the subscription form on my website, which is seventhbear.com.
Splendid. It's also on robertrose.com, which I think you're...
robertrose.net, yeah. Unfortunately, I couldn't get to .com, yeah.
That's all right. The dad genes of domain names.
The dad genes of domains. Yes, exactly.
All right, mate. And when we spin the dial on the interwebs, where are we going to find you, mate?
LinkedIn, and now increasingly Threads. I've been starting to enjoy Threads more.
Yeah, nice. And for me, will you be in the bar next week?
Of course.
I look forward to it, my friend. I'll see you then. Thank you, Robert. Love how we used AI as a writing assistant there. And I agree with this idea of putting all your ideas into one asset and repurposing them, which certainly beats having a blank page. So that's a wrap on our visit to the Rose and Rockstar. Thank you for putting a dime into your podcasting jukebox, selecting our track and jiving along with us. You can find all of Robert's links, the topic we discussed, and links to me, our Beat newsletter, our blog, previous episodes, and all the things on rockstarcmo.com. Coming up on Wednesday, Jeff is back and we'll be talking about marketing causes, so drifting off the B2B theme into something Jeff's quite passionate about at the moment. And Robert will be back in the bar on Saturday. In the meantime, I'll leave you with this quote from Dr. Ellie Goldratt from way before AI was the buzz. Automation is good so long as you know exactly where to put the machine.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Robbie Samuels hosts the On the Schmooze podcast. Robbie, tell listeners what to expect from the show.
Since 2015, I've interviewed entrepreneurs who overcame challenges to achieve success in their field or industry. Tune in to On the Schmooze to listen as I ask deep questions to elicit untold stories about leadership and networking.
And where can people subscribe?
Find the show at ontheschmooze.com or on marketingpodcast.net, or just search for it wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard them. Go subscribe. This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.